Let's talk about universe. Welcome to my channel. I focus on tabletop role-playing games, video games, and science fiction. In 1981, SPI released Universe, the role-playing game of the future. It came in a box. There were 3 books, or guides, shall we say, in them. The Game Master's Guide, Adventure Guide, and Delta V. I happen to have a copy of the 1981, or first edition. In 1982, they released a second edition, which had a few changes and updates. In addition to this, there's a whole bunch of other stuff. There's a large map and a bunch of things, which I have sitting over on the shelf over here. So the only thing I really don't have to make this complete set is the 2 dice that came with it. And I may actually have them, but I probably took them out of the box and put them in with the rest of my dice. So I'm not sure which were the original dice that came with it. I didn't buy this one. This one I inherited. A friend of mine was moving, and he had too much stuff, and he decided to lighten his load and asked me to come over and take a look. And being the hoarder that I somewhat am, I took a whole bunch of stuff. Took a lot of books and a lot of games and so on, and that's how I ended up with some of this. This is one of the ones that I ended up with. So I was looking around about this and doing some research on this before I did this, and it's an unusual situation because the trademark for this is expired. In fact, what happened was SPI went bankrupt and was acquired by TSR. And TSR was not particularly interested in the universe, as a role-playing game. So they didn't renew the trademark, and what happened was someone, you can look up who it was, I don't know his name exactly, took it upon himself to scan in the original guides, all of them, and OCR them and set them up so that they would set through LaTeX. And if you don't know what that is, but the reason that was sort of interesting is that unlike many games, this one actually did some math, that there were a few equations in the books. And so it made sense to do it, and it made sense to do it in TeX, and they did it in TeX. The PDFs are readily available. They're down there, and that would be what I would call the pseudo 3rd edition, because it takes the 1st edition and they were based upon the OCR of the 2nd edition, which was then cleaned up and paginated with TeX and with LaTeX and so on, and it's available, so you can get that. This has one advantage. It's one of the few complete role-playing games where it's freely available. It was sold at one point in time, and I think it was because it didn't fit with the TSR product line. They were looking at Alternity and some other things that they were looking at with science fiction. And it was to compete against Traveller. And so it's a different kind of game, that it's more like Traveller. It uses only D20s. Actually, it uses them only as really D10s and percentiles. It doesn't use them as D20s. That you roll everything is with those 2. You never use any other dice except that. I read one review of this, and they complained about the organization of the rules, and they said it's standard SPI. Well, okay, if you have never played an SPI game, I sort of understand that. But if you've been in business, and I've been around a while and written up a large number of technical documents, it uses a numbering scheme that's very common to anybody who's doing stuff in business. Technical documents where you have the sections are numbered, and so what happens is that the way somebody described it was that they'll write the general rule, which will be like 2.2 is the general rule. Then they'll give a specifics, which will be like 2.1, and then they'll give exceptions to that, which is 2.1.1, and then you'll give exceptions to that, which will be 2.1.1.1, and you'll have your sections are all numbered out, and that way, which is different than what you see in most RPGs, but is very common in business. That's how businesses normally number their documents it's very common to use that. It's also done in the military. So you see the standard breakdown. I was trying to read through this, and I can understand why it never really took off. It's very complicated in that you have lots and lots and lots of charts. And I mean lots and lots of charts going throughout there, and exceptions to rules, and lots of tables. Probably comparing it to the DMG, or for Dungeons and Dragons, it's probably not much more than that, but the books are fairly dense. The PDFs are all relayed out in single column, which actually helps them, makes them a bit more readable than the triple column. And so I've got the link for getting the PDFs. You have the Guide Masters, or what is it? The Game Master's Guide. Delta V, which is this one, is all about spaceship combat. That's compatible with this. Then there's the Adventure Guide, which is an adventure, and it gives you spaceship encounters and so on. The problem that was there is that it's like Traveller, in that there's no real... The base Traveller, there is no real concept of how to start the game. That's probably the biggest challenge that you're in with this, because you've got to create the world and you've got to create the adventures. And that's probably true with science fiction games in general. Traveller included with that it's unlike an adventure. You go out and travel over to a dungeon or whatever, and you hear some rumors. You can hear some rumors, but in space, it's the biggest difference with space adventures than, say, fantasy adventures, is that you're in a spaceship. So is there spaceship combat? You don't have the equivalent of that unless you're out on the ship, unless you go out on a ship but you can do a lot of adventuring in your standard role-playing games without getting involved with ship-to-ship combat. And you can, in fact, you never really need to get involved in ship-to-ship combat in the games that I've tended to run. So you may have a sea monster or something comes up and attacks a ship. But you don't really have space monsters. That sort of doesn't fit well with science fiction. And it sort of leads the question of what are you doing? And an awful lot of it is that you get into trade and things like that, which is a very different kind of game than the fantasy role-playing games. So I was looking at this and thinking about how this one, if this one is worth spending much more time on. I was just rearranging my bookshelves, and that's where I pull this down and I go, oh, well, let's take a look at it, and reading through it and seeing what's there. And I found like I said, the PDFs. If you're interested, there is a Facebook page that isn't active, and there's a Yahoo group that has had one post in 2017 and like only 3 or 4 posts in 2016. So it's not active at all either, which is sort of a shame. I hate to see some of these things just pass away. Would I be interested in playing it? Probably not. I'd like to maybe see somebody play it. And playing it with just the PDFs, as a player, it's not a problem. You got more than enough to play. The issue is that it's missing a couple of things that they never did implement. And they're not that complicated. Well, in one sense they are. You don't have the character record is not available. But it's only a single page, and you could easily create that by yourself. It doesn't have the logs, and these are the world logs. So you have a different log for each size of planet that you explore and do things with. And it's got a lot to it, a lot of tables. They claim it's a comprehensive presentation of state-of-the-art science fiction role-playing system. That's on the cover here. Comparing it to, say, Traveller, which I have up the big 5th edition of Traveller on the shelf over there, this might be easier than Traveller. I hate to say that. I mean, I have 1st edition Traveller and 5th edition Traveller. So, has anybody played this? Have you ever heard of this before? I mean, it's the name alone is sort of a problem. The Universe, the role-playing game of the future. Well, that wasn't very prophetic, shall we say. Would you be interested in playing that? I'd like to see what other people think. So, thank you for watching. I look forward to learning what you think about this video. Let me know in the comments below. I appreciate all your comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give me a thumbs down. I appreciate both forms of feedback. If you're new here and would like to subscribe, you can click on the icon on the left. If you're interested, there's more content on the right.